Today on the Big 3 in 30, newly number one Duke dominates Notre Dame.
Man, what a win this was for Duke over Notre Dame.
Missouri gets a ranked win over Tennessee.
T.O. Barrett was just unstoppable in the game.
And BYU falls at home to unranked UCF.
BYU trailed by as many as 36 points to the UCF Knights.
This is the Big 3 in 30 College, the three biggest stories on campus from our local experts at the Locked On Podcast Network. We bring you the real story, why it matters, what's next, who wins the big game, and more, all in 30 minutes. The Big 3 in 30 College starts now. Thank you for making the Big 3 in 30 your first listen of the day, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Download the FanDuel app now by visiting FanDuel.com and win $300 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Duke took over as the number one team in the country this week and showed why they deserve it in a 44-point win over Notre Dame. The Blue Devils got to more than 100 points in the blowout, and J.J. Jackson recaps the dominant night on Locked On Blue Devils.
Man, what a win this was for Duke over Notre Dame. I teased it in the open. Felt like they really took the fight out of the Fighting Irish. People might have been a little concerned. Can you follow up the high of beating the number one team in the country in Michigan, now being the number one team in the land yourself? Wow, I'm running out of things to say. This was unbelievable how awesome Duke played.
Yeah, I was expecting at least, a close first half, with all the spectacle that was, Michigan on Saturday. I figured Duke would at least have a little bit of a hangover, but I think they said Shire mentioned that this was a business trip, and the team seemed to treat it as one. There was very little real emotion. It was just business, and they took care of business.
Dude, like 54 points in the first half, a couple of minutes into the game, people might have been late getting over tonight to turn the broadcast on, and it's 20-4. Like Duke jumped out to a 20-4 lead in a game like this and never looked back. Everyone got going and played well for Duke, but really it was the interior once again where we talked so much about Cameron Boozer and Patrick Gongba dominating in that Michigan game and Duke's massive front court. What do? Here in this game against Notre Dame, those guys got to work early.
Yeah, man. I mean, Boozer did Boozer things. I mean, he had 20 points in the first half. I mean, he and Gongba were just unstoppable.
Yeah.
Just completely unstoppable.
Without a doubt. I mean, all around Duke as a team played really well. We saw, you mentioned the 20 points that he had at the break, nearly outscored Notre Dame by himself. Had 9 rebounds as well. We've had a couple of games where he's had the full first half double-double, and here he was able to pad the stat sheets right out of the gates and continue to make the case for the nation's top player. I say it every week in every game with Cam. It's one of those moments where I would have loved to see him continuing to add to the scoring column and some of those scoring numbers too. I know we talked about that last time, Brian, but man, he absolutely got the job done, bro.
Yeah, he very well could have scored 40 points tonight. And
and
he probably would have, but I think it was another master stroke by Shire to get other guys, a little run in that second half. I mean, there was, even with, playing the 9th guy, the 10th guy, there was still really no like let up. They continued to work. This way Boozer gets a little rest. Big Pat gets a little rest. No one really played over 26 minutes in this game.
Yeah.
It was this is the kind of game you won after all of that spectacle, a game where you could sort of like relax a little bit, especially after that first half, being able to go into the second half and not really worry about anything. And just, it's coming up on that time where guys start to feel, like the season, the weight of the season, a little nagging injuries, you get a little tired quicker. I think it was a great, time for them to rest guys, and I think it's going to pay off.
Yeah, I mean, it was obvious that Cam Boozer wasn't going to play as much in the second half when Duke felt as comfortable with the lead that they had, and rightfully so. I mean, you don't want to risk any injuries with all the bigger games coming up this season. Big one coming up on Saturday, but again, still the biggest picture in mind here for Duke is to go chase that national championship trophy and bring it back here to Durham. Thinking about other guys that really stepped up in a game like this, I want to recognize so many players throughout our conversation. We'll certainly do that, Brian. I can't walk away from this game and not want to give Darren Harris some love. Career high, 16 points, second leading scorer on the squad, did not play a single second in the game against Michigan, and knew that he was going to get an opportunity here and absolutely took advantage of those minutes today.
Oh, without a doubt. I mean, and it wasn't even just his scoring, his hustle, diving on the floor for loose balls. He got one or two steals in this game. Nice dunk. He was aggressive when he needed to be. I think he showed, Jon Scheyer quite a bit in this game. And I hope, that this leads to him, maybe inching up a little bit in the rotation. I don't know if he's going to take, Kaminya's minutes or Sarr's minutes, but maybe they'll trust a little bit more on the perimeter.
Yeah, it was a 40-point road victory for Duke basketball in conference play. As the broadcast was highlighting there towards the end of the game, Coach K only did that once. Only one time in 1999, Duke won at Virginia by 40-plus points. And now it's happened twice under Jon Scheyer. A win against Georgia Tech on the road by 40-plus a few years ago. Now you've got a 44-point road victory over Notre Dame. That one first, the Coach K stat, 42 seasons, only one road win in conference by 40-plus. A little surprising when you think about the excellence of Coach K, man.
Yeah, but the ACC was a much tougher league when Coach K was in it.
So totally fair.
I'm not 100% surprised at that stat.
Totally fair. But already 2 of them for Jon Scheyer, dominating the competition and the games that are had there. And I thought that was, they talk a lot about the business trip approach, not going back to Durham in between the game that was played on Saturday in D.C. and then this game on Tuesday. And, boy, it certainly did feel like a business trip watching those guys out on the floor.
Without a doubt. I think they treated this as if it was an NBA thing. They went to Chicago. They had a little time there. They worked out at the Bulls training center.
Yep.
I think that was another masterstroke of coaching by Jon Scheyer.
Yeah,
he's coaching against human nature as it is.
Yeah,
with everyone expecting a little bit of a letdown. And I think he's the kind of coach that puts a little bit of thought into everything he does. And I think he has his finger on the pulse of this team, and it's paying off.
Yeah, a lot of people in conference were hopeful that Marcus Burton would be able to stay healthy throughout the course of the season. That's something that has plagued him at times throughout his college career, a really decorated scorer there for Notre Dame. And so he's out for the season. He wasn't in this game. Harrelson's injured. I mean, they certainly had their own injuries, but Duke just didn't matter, really, who was out there on the floor with how well they were playing. I mean, Micah Shrewsbury, the head coach, got injured in that. We've never seen something like that before, Brian. It's a 30-point game at halftime. And to start the second half, the focus is on the opposing team's coach, who's down by 30 because he's walked out of the locker room in a walking boot. That was nuts.
Yeah, I mean, to get beat down like that and you get injured, I think someone needs to give Micah a hug. I mean, that was rough.
Ever wanted to experience the NBA Finals live and in person? FanDuel is giving you the chance to turn that dream into a reality with their NBA sweepstakes. Here's how it works. Use your profit boost on any NBA future and you'll automatically be entered for a shot to win an NBA Finals trip for 2. That's right, flights, tickets, the whole experience. If you're already looking at the board and thinking about which team can make a deep run, this is the perfect time to lock it in. Not only can your pick cash, but it could also send you to the finals. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. Use your profit boost on an NBA future and get entered for your chance to win a trip to the NBA Finals. Play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA.
Welcome back to the Big 3 and 30 College. Missouri hosted number 22 Tennessee last night and picked up a big win for its NCAA tournament resume. Locked On Mizzou host John Miller has the recap.
Not only did Mark Mitchell play his usual bully ball effectively, but T.O. Barrett was just unstoppable in the game. Was 12 of 17 from the floor, all 2-point shots, by the way. I'd love to see how many of those attempts came in the paint. I know he took at least a couple jumpers, but he was just taking those smaller defenders, down and dragging them down into the deep end of the pool, basically. And Dickie Nutt, after the game, the Missouri assistant coach, always enjoy hearing Coach Nutt on the radio after the game, especially after a victory. Well, he said that T.O. just came up to the coaching staff and said, hey, this guy cannot guard me. And they just kept going to what worked time and time again. Rick Barnes said on T.O. after the game that he was, quote, terrific. He went down there and got what he wanted. No question about that. Barrett was he just seems to keep getting better and better by the week here for Missouri. And, I think Dennis Gates deserves, and obviously his staff, like Coach Nutt as well, but to me, Coach Gates deserves a massive amount of credit for T.O. Barrett, a guy who came from Link Academy, but unlike a lot of players from Link Academy, was not considered a 4 or 5 star McDonald's All-American type of recruit, but obviously a guy with a lot of talent, a guy with talent that needed to be developed. And to me, I just don't think Dennis Gates detractors, the people who just simply say, oh, it's time to move on, he can't coach. I'm sorry, is developing players not a part of coaching? Because time and time again, you see guys like Sean East go from basically a non-3-point shooter to a huge plus a 3-point shooter, and now a guy who's making money in the G League, I believe. Same deal with Demoy Hodge, and Kobe Brown deserves, well, he owes Dennis Gates a huge debt of gratitude and his staff for turning him into a 3-point shooter from a sub 30% guy to a 45% type 3-point shooter by the time he's a senior. So my point here is you see Gates over and over again. I think guys get better under him. Caleb Grill loved playing for Dennis Gates. Tamar Bates loved playing for Dennis Gates. I again, just don't think he's getting enough credit for how his players continue to develop. Like I said, that bully ball, I really did feel like it was a bit of T.O. Barrett was doing almost a Mark Mitchell impression a little bit at times. It really was almost like they just flipped spots on the court a little bit. And Barrett, of course, hit what I thought was the clutch shot of the game, made it 69-65. With 37 seconds left. Just, like I said, this wasn't the actual bully ball. He just made a great right-handed drive, little scoop shot off the backboard. It was just like he was in control and knew, once again, hey, this guy can't guard me. Not even just in the post, but off the dribble too. Really impressive stuff from Barrett. And by the way, that was after the Gillespie kid for Tennessee made a logo 3 after just a horrid brick by the Volunteers led to yet another long rebound for Tennessee. And I will say this, I thought Felix Okpara for Tennessee really controlled the early part of the game. I thought he was controlling the rim defensively, and he was 7 for 7 from the floor around the rim as well. So obviously he was excellent in the ball game. But I actually thought T.O., again, like I said, it was almost as though Mitchell and T.O. flipped spots on the court at times when Missouri was in their half-court offense. Well, that actually helped get Okpara out of the paint, and that made things easier not only for T.O., but some other Missouri players as well, and including Mark Mitchell, who had another excellent game, absolutely carried Missouri's offense in the first half, along with Barrett. Those two players alone had 20 of Missouri's 26 points in the first half. And obviously, if those two weren't playing well, Missouri would have probably gotten its butts handed to them. 0 for 9 in the first half was Missouri, and a bad start by the Tigers. And for as much as I patted myself on the back for the dogfight thumbnail yesterday, frankly, the Tigers weren't fighting hard enough in the first few minutes of the ball game. A 12-2 start by Tennessee. And one thing I noticed immediately is I was saying, hey, Sean Phillips, you have got to stay engaged on the glass, in particular against this Tennessee team, the number 1 offensive rebounding team statistically coming into this game in the entire country. There was a couple times where Phillips got caught out on the perimeter, challenged a shot at the 3-point line that was missed. A good challenge by Phillips. The problem is, after the challenge, he relaxed and felt like, well, I'm 25 feet from the basket. I don't really need to worry about rebounding here. Yes, he did. Because as you see over and over again, the more 3-pointers are taken, that also equals more long rebounds. No longer in basketball can you just assume that the ball is going to land in the paint 95% of the time. The ball can come from about anywhere when the ball is being shot from 28 feet away. Bad caroms, as I just said, led to that Gillespie logo 3. There was a couple times when I just thought, man, Phillips, you have got to remain engaged. You've got to at least put a body on the shooter there after the shot. And indeed, about 2.5 minutes in, Gates came and got Phillips and substituted Trent Burns into the ball game. And again, I thought Burns was very effective for the most part. By the way, first foul was called more than 6 minutes into this ball game. Missouri didn't get a foul for maybe 10 or 15 minutes into the ball game, and I was going, gee, what do you want to bet there's a million fouls called in the second half? Certainly it was a much more tightly called game in the second, but it wasn't the foul and free throw fest that I definitely feared. By the way, Jaden Stone obviously wasn't great in the ball game, only played 18 minutes. Nothing actionable there. It's not as though he's in like a multi-game slump or anything like that. I almost thought maybe he was sick or something like that, or Dennis Gates just realized, hey, Jaden just doesn't have it tonight. But fortunately, Anthony Robinson picked him up, who is now suddenly, by the way, in his last 4 games, speaking of slumps, Robinson seems to have mostly gotten out of his, hit a couple of big shots in the second half. He's now 6 for his last 12 from the 3-point line, by the way. So an encouraging sign there for one of Missouri's most important players.
Ever wanted to experience the NBA Finals live and in person? FanDuel is giving you the chance to turn that dream into a reality with their NBA sweepstakes. Here's how it works. Use your profit boost on any NBA future and you'll automatically be entered for a shot to win an NBA Finals trip for 2. That's right, flights, tickets, the whole experience. If you're already looking at the board and thinking about which team can make a deep run, this is the perfect time to lock it in. Not only can your pick cash, but it could also send you to the finals. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. Use your profit boost on an NBA future and get entered for your chance to win a trip to the NBA Finals. Play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA.
Welcome back to the Big 3 in 30 College. BYU basketball has now lost 2 of its last 3 after falling at home to unranked UCF yesterday. Locked On Cougars host Jake Hatch has the recap after the defeat.
If you stayed up late last night to watch this one go down, you know exactly what happened as BYU trailed by as many as 36 points to the UCF Knights, ultimately falling 97-84. And don't let that final score fool you. It was nowhere near that margin in terms of that what I thought the disparity between these two teams was. Yes, I know that BYU made a run in the final, let's say, 10 minutes of this game, and they outscored UCF. I'm doing quick math in my head. So from about the 10-minute mark on, with 10:15 to go, UCF led 76-44. So it was a 32-point lead at that point. BYU from that point on outscored them 40-21. To me, that was empty calories in terms of that comeback effort. And yes, it was good to see guys like Tyler Maruss and Alexei Kostic have strong moments in this game. And in fact, BYU had one of their best bench performances of the season, 21 points off the bench from those 2 players. So it's still just 2 guys off the bench contributing to BYU's bottom line. But ultimately, you can't give up 56% shooting from the field, worse, 58% from 3, and expect that you're going to compete in any meaningful fashion against a team like UCF. UCF looked the part of an NCAA tournament team who was peaking at the right time of the year, whereas if you contrast what BYU put on the court last night, you got to be mighty concerned that this could be a first-round exit for the BYU Cougars. Now, I will say this. We will learn a lot about BYU going out on the road. They go out on the road against West Virginia on Saturday. They followed up with a midweek game at Cincinnati before ultimately having senior night against Texas Tech a week from Saturday. There are 3 games remaining in the regular season for BYU, and we are going to learn a lot about what happened against Iowa State, which was absolutely the win of the year for the BYU Cougars, their first win over a Big Ten opponent, really the signature win of the season for the Cougars. If that was the real BYU, or if what happened against UCF is what the real BYU is all about. That's why I referenced the on-again, off-again nature of this BYU team. It was disheartening. At one point in this game, and UCF ended up with 25 total assists on 36 made buckets. That's an incredible assist to made field goal percentage. At one point in this game, the disparity of assists between these 2 teams was 22-2. BYU ultimately ended up with 11 assists on 29 made field goals, and that's kind of par for the course of this BYU team. They're just not a team that has high assist numbers because they play a lot of ISO ball, and that obviously leads to why AJ DeBonce has 29 points in this game, 8 rebounds. 0 assists. Robert Wright III, though, 20 points, 7 assists. So he had 7 of the 11 assists. The other assists came from 2 from Tyler Moroz, 1 from Alexi Kostic, and the other one from Kennard Davis Jr. The issue I see with this BYU basketball team is they just don't work as a cohesive unit. And quite frankly, at this point, why can you not defend the three-point line? And it was a frankly pathetic effort at points with the lack of hustle, it felt like, trying to close out on guys on the perimeter. UCF is a high three-point volume shooting team, and they were cooking. There's just zero doubt about that. And you tip your cap to UCF to a degree, but some of the wide open nature of those shots and the body language BYU players displayed after some of those shots went in, it's not a good look for Kevin Young and company. And I would have thought, and this is personal opinion on the matter, that going into halftime, Kevin Young would run into that locker room, show the tape as BYU is down big, and say, guys, where's the pride? Where is the heart? Well, you know what happened coming out of the first part of the second half? Oh, wait, a 10-0 run for UCF. I don't like coming on this podcast and ripping BYU. It's not, quote, good for business, unquote. But what else am I supposed to say about that performance from the BYU basketball program? And I'm telling you, I'm not buying stock in the late run by BYU. I felt like UCF relaxed. They knew they were up 32 points. They got as high as 36 points. They had this game in the bag, and there was an analytics thing put out by Jerem Jordan. He retweeted a guy that said, if you have a 32-point lead with 12 minutes and change to go in a college basketball game, you're essentially assured of winning that basketball game. It's like 99.9999% you're going to win that basketball game. ESPN's BPI, the basketball percentages index, I'm pretty sure the entire second half of that game, UCF had a 99.9% chance of winning this basketball game. It was not a good effort from the BYU basketball squad. And yes, it could be they just had an off night. Sure. But I think the body of work of this BYU basketball squad shows us that it goes up and down. It ebbs and flows with this team. When they're feeling right and the way that they played against Iowa State on Saturday night, yeah, they're capable of beating anybody. But the way they played against UCF, they're just as capable of losing to anybody, it feels like. And that's the concerning nature of this BYU basketball team at this point. Because let's say they have an off game the first round of the NCAA tournament. There's a reason why it's called win or go home. It's one and done. There is no bouncing back. You lose in March Madness, thanks for coming. Let's get you a plane ride back to Provo. That's the cruel nature of this sport as it comes to its ultimate finale. Is you go into the NCAA tournament and it feels like this BYU team is very much a boomer bust type team. And based on the performance against UCF, I think a lot of you, myself included, would be saying, okay, that's a team that's going to bust and they might be a first round exit. But like, once again, if you put the type of performance you put on against Iowa State, well, you're capable of beating literally anybody, it feels like, in that circumstance. The problem is you've only got one of the games against Iowa State, against a handful of others on the other side that say, this BYU team could struggle come tournament time. But there are 3 games remaining. We will learn, hopefully, I'm just, fingers crossed, who the real BYU is in those 3 games. They'll have at least one game in the Big 12 tournament. And let's just put it this way. BYU, with their body of work already with regards to their quad 1 games, quad 2 games, they're a lock to make the NCAA tournament field. It's all about seeding at this point for BYU. And then we'll ultimately see where the chips fall come March Madness. But it's a mighty, mighty concerning effort level for BYU coming out of this game against UCF. And they got a whole lot to work on. If they cannot defend the 3-point line, it could be a very, very quick one and done in the NCAA tournament.
That's all for the Big 3 and 30 college. If you follow pro basketball or football, the Big 3 and 30 has shows for the biggest news in the NBA and NFL going up every weekday just like this one. Just search the Big 3 and 30 NBA or the Big 3 and 30 NFL wherever you're listening or watching now. Thanks again for tuning in to the Big 3 and 30 college.